My name is Will Anderson. My co-commentator, Conrad Bassett-Bouchard, will likely be joining us in just a few moments. But wow, what a matchup to start the day between these two amazing players. Austin Shin, a former UK and US national champion. Dave Wiegand, a two-time former US champion. So let's see how this plays out. This is a really important game for Dave. He's a win behind Austin with 4 rounds to go. Vowel heavy rack for Dave to start. Seems pretty clear that Dave is going to exchange, and very, very quickly he moves to exchange. Instead of keeping EIST, which maybe that is an option here, he keeps the A, which duplicates a little bit better. And wow, look at that. You see his choice is paying off as Dave has arrow sat on his rack, ready to go down after Austin's next play. So Austin, on the other hand, with higher scoring letters, and Conrad's delayed by a massive hangover. No, I don't think it's that. I think it's actually more that Conrad is actually on site in New Orleans, and he has been broadcasting from his hotel room, and he is having to figure out what his accommodations will be to stream today. So for now, it'll be me flying solo, but I am very sure that we'll have Conrad joining us very soon. So Dave exchanges, draws into a 7-letter bingo, and Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, I wonder, anybody in the chat I think Dave, or we saw the bingo of Aerosat yesterday. I think it was Dave that played it too. So this is a possibility that Dave is going to play the same 7-letter bingo for the second time over the course of this tournament, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check we'll have to check the tape. So Austin playing decoy here. I was wondering maybe if he would play fade instead, F-E-Y-E-D. I think that's probably a slight improvement. Fade would score 32 to decoy's 30, and I feel like CO versus EF might also be a slight improvement. But decoy is certainly a fine play. It's going to be met, however, with a bingo in response. Aerosat and decoys, probably the likeliest response for Dave here. So, oh, and look at that. Austin, not to be denied himself, he has drawn into Seafoam. So we are going to see some fireworks here. Dave starting out with Aerosat and correctly determining that this is his highest scoring placement. 71 points for him here, but Seafoam is going to come down nearly immediately for Austin once he sees that it plays in a number of places. The only thing left for Austin is to decide, does he want a few extra points for playing Seafoam alongside Aerosat, or is he going to play it underneath the D and E of decoys for a significant decrease in score? I think it's clearly correct to take the extra points, 84 for Seafoam, paralleling Aerosat with AS and TE, and he has decided the same. And it's being pointed out that Dave is potentially going to bingo right back, just fireworks to open this game between the two top seeds in the field, our two former national champions butting heads here. And no surprise, one of the reasons that these guys have the resumes that they do in Scrabble is that they are just pretty automatic at finding words like this. Yeah, Conrad, feel free to chip in if you're here. Happy to see what's up with you. So score right now, 114 to Austin.
Hey, y'all can let me know how bad the background noise is. We did the whole forget about hotel checkout being at 11. Will was smart not to show up.
Well, I mean, I've been saying all along that I regret not being on hand.
Well, I am super glad I'm here in New Orleans, and if I shout loud enough, maybe they can hear me. No, just kidding. I'm a little ways away.
I think it's totally fine. So you shouldn't worry too much.
Sweet.
All right, there's Dave finally playing Arterial. It didn't take him terrifically long to play it. I'm pretty sure he was just looking through all the other letters, and now we've seen 3 bingos in a span of 4 turns to start this game. We're definitely headed towards shootout territory here. And just looking at this board, Conrad, are you seeing the board
Yeah, I mean,
alignment?
this looks like what I would expect from these two playing in like a classic shootout.
Yeah, and it's gonna continue here because Austin is gonna play Yule parallel to Seafoam down at the lower right part of the board, making 2-letter overlaps for 60 points here.
And then Dave's gonna bingo right back.
And Dave is gonna bingo again. So this is
Amazing.
yeah.
You love to see it. I have a little insider knowledge. I was chatting with Dave briefly this morning before he headed over to the tournament room. And I said, "Hey, Dave, do you think you're going to win the tournament today?" And he looks at me and kind of like cocks his head to the side a bit. It's like, yeah. And that was
Actually, is Dave gonna bingo here? I think I might have misread his rack, or maybe it got. There are bingos through the R, but I don't think they fit.
Oh, they don't fit. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So but either way, he's still going to score a ton. Yeah. None of those things actually fit.
Yeah.
Arden 13 asks a great question. When you look at this, what are you looking for? Max points for yourself or preventing plays for the other person? That's an amazing question. I think the best way of thinking about approaching any turn in Scrabble is balancing all of those different factors. You're performing this balancing act and trying to come up with a decision where you're weighing all of the factors that you mentioned and then even more of those against one another, right? Like, so there are times, yesterday I mentioned it, isn't it so wonderful when your highest scoring play also achieves the exact strategic objective that you want? But
Exactly.
Usually that's not the case, right? Usually the case is you have a play that scores really well and leaves you really bad tiles, or you have a play that scores not as well and leaves you slightly better tiles for next turn, or you have a play that doesn't score very well or leave you good tiles, but achieves a very specific strategic objective, such as preventing plays for your opponent and that sort of thing. So it is a balancing act. And my advice is to be very flexible with what you decide to play.
Well, when we think about your advice, this is actually a pretty good situation, right? Dave's got a way he can score a bunch of points, but it kind of blows up his rack, or he can score smaller, play a little more control, and go for a bingo next turn. So how would you apply it here? Say like HAE versus Lathy versus, I don't know. What do you think?
Or something. Yeah. So Conrad is alluding to the fact that you have this really open triple word score in the top middle of the board, where if Dave opts to play in that spot, he's going to score 35 to 40, mid 40s in that spot, or he can take a lower score but dramatically increase the odds that he will be able to use all 7 of his tiles on the next turn, which we call a bingo, getting you 50 extra points. So whenever you're sacrificing points like that, the reason you're doing that is for the promise of a future score that is significantly higher than the one you can get now. So with a board like this, you're just looking at the board and you say to yourself, where can I play words effectively, long words, 7 and 8 letter words? There's a huge S hook, for example, on the right side of the board, making as into ass. You can have that there. Yes, everybody giggle in the chat if you need to, but that's a good S hook. There's a bunch of open letters that are really good bingo tiles, those low point tiles that make so many longer words. So if ever you're going to sacrifice points, this would be a good choice to do it. But I think Dave is actually correct to take some extra points here.
It makes sense, and I think that this is kind of the play I thought might show up. Is it's, he could add his either for like, say, 5 more points, but longer term, maybe you want to keep that E for bingos more quickly, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Dave plays Lithe instead of Lathy, which is another option in that same spot. Austin immediately is going to dump his Q in that spot. The Q, a letter that many newer players are fond of because it's a 10-point face value. But for players at this level who are really, really good at finding 7 and 8 letter words, very, very few of those contain the Q. And the Q is also too heavily reliant on that U. There are very few other letters that are so reliant on another letter in the alphabet to be used properly. So the Q is really regarded as the worst tile in the game at this level of Scrabble. And it's an important lesson to internalize if you're newer to the game.
I agree. You know, it's easy to say, ooh, 10 points, 10 points. But like, as your average score gets higher, you know, from maybe when you're a newer player and you're averaging 10 points, well, hey, yeah, you play QI for 11 or whatever. Pretty cool. But all of a sudden, you know, you start getting to intermediate tournament levels, you're averaging 20 plus points a game. All of a sudden, QI for 11 feels more like a kind of a letdown, right?
So good point.
For Dave, Maire seems pretty clear, I think.
Down to the lower
Amia, maybe, I don't know.
Down to that lower middle triple. Yeah, something like Mayor or Maria. Either of those options look totally good. So Dave spelled out Maria on his rack. The define bot should be up here now. Let's see. There we go. So define chat is exclamation point define in chat with a word that you're not sure of will bring up a definition for you if you see, and you will if you're new to Scrabble or more of a casual Scrabble player. You will definitely be seeing words played by these players that you've never seen or heard of before. So yeah, definition is a little weird. I don't think that is correct, but that's okay. A lot of the definitions are good. Oh, is Dave thinking of keeping his R here? He might play Mia instead of Maria, which is this is the exact type of situation that we were just describing, right? So Maria would score 31 points, parallel to Arterial going down to that red triple word score there. Amia, on the other hand, scores 7 fewer points. But you would keep that R on your rack, which the R is a really good tile to play bingos with. Instead, Dave is going to play Maria. I actually like his choice here to take those extra points.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the thing to do here. You know, he ends up blocking the I that Austin needed, and in the process, giving Austin the I that he needed.
True, yeah. So Austin very likely to bingo here in response with that blank. The blank incredibly useful at this level as the players have studied hard. They know their 7 and 8 letter words in the dictionary. The blank is the best tile to help you deploy all of the rest of your letters. And you can see Austin finding that word over toil, his best play here. And he's going to get a really good score of 74 points for that. So that's going to bring him up to 275 to 200 over Dave Wiegand, because I didn't add his chi points there. So now we're up to date on the scores.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, for the few turns I've been here, it's just been kind of the difference of Austin going from a terrible rack to immediately drawing a blank and bingoing, and Dave having better racks but no bingos. And sometimes that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, timing so important in Scrabble. Sometimes the same 2 racks at a certain point can be incredibly powerful, and that at another point in the game could be incredibly weak. So a lot of Scrabble is timing. So but Dave is still very much in this game. He's going to score and cut this deficit a little bit. Austin does have the S, which again, that S hook hooks, and when we say hook, we simply mean placing a letter at the end or front of a word that's already on the board to lengthen it. So you can see AS on that right side of the board with Aerosat and Seafoam that can have an S go after it as well. So a big S hook. And Austin looks like he's getting ready on his next turn to play Givens with that hook on the right side.
Yeah. Dave could certainly use I suppose, an open S right now, yeah?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not likely that Austin's going to give him one. But yeah, Dave would have a real bailout for this rack with an S out in open space of Uberties. No, not puberties, but Uberties.
Just Uberties. Not to be confused with Huberties.
Absolutely. Our Singaporean grandmaster friend. So, yeah, Dave Scott, I mean, he has some good bingo tiles here. And when we say that, we mean those low point tiles like the R, the E, the I, the T. These are the letters that appear most frequently in 7 and 8 letter words. So when you have those low point tiles, you're thinking to yourself, can I play a 7 or 8 letter word and get 50 bonus points for doing so? The problem for Dave is he also has a B and a U. Those are not nearly as good. So I'm positive that he will make a play using the B and the U and keeping a bunch of those other letters.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those cases where maybe you sacrifice a few more points to go for a bingo, because the different sets of tiles you could leave for next turn, there's a larger range between like EIRT, which is really good, and maybe keeping a 5th tile all of a sudden is just a little bit risky when you really need to bingo soon. So maybe you make a slight sacrifice here in the name of, better times soon in the future.
Yeah.
That sound right?
Yeah, it totally sounds right. Just looking at the board from Dave's perspective, you can see Overtoil has some nice letters in it. So the E, the R, the T of Overtoil are all kind of promising letters for Dave to potentially draw something big to, a bingo there. In Dave's shoes, he would really love to get that S and try to play something along the right hand side of the board too, but Austin's going to get there first. So it is a tricky situation just because he's not going to come up with a play that scores that well here. And he's losing by enough points that he really is going to need to, well, certainly after Austin's next play, Dave will be desperate to draw a bingo after whatever he plays here.
Yeah.
Is he going to play Butte?
Butte, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, this is a play that he's going to make kind of grudgingly, not particularly happy about making a play like Butte. That would go down parallel to Aerosat, making EA the archaic 2-letter word. He could also play Tube in that same spot, one place down.
Yeah.
So,
something to be said, if there's a universe where playing it one space down, could make double doubles in the future through that O of decoys where you get to multiply your play by 4. Maybe that kind of like preserves it a little better because you have to like play something next to EE, but at the same time, there's also a risk that your opponent plays parallel to it. So maybe this is a way of keeping it more open.
Very good point. That O of decoys, Conrad pointing out, is a potential really heavy spot. It's obviously you have to draw a very, very specific bingo that plays through an O kind of in the middle of the word, but that's not impossible. And wow, okay, so Dave has drawn a bingo. I think he should be able to play something here, like Rosinier to the R of Overtoil.
Yep.
Or something else, somewhere else, I'm sure.
And one thing I wanted to note, while I think the next couple plays are going to be, I think, pretty quick, you might notice that as Will and I are talking throughout the day, we'll say a play, and then as we're talking, we'll kind of like change our mind, and that's kind of how Scrabble works. Much more like any other game where you're kind of evaluating things on the fly. You pick 2 or 3 things to consider. And then in the moment, they may look good. Then you think a little bit more and you're like, oh, actually, maybe not. So say, for example, I'm talking through Butte versus Tube. Tube looked kind of interesting for a sec. Maybe not. So that's kind of a thing that's cool about this game. And you'll even note that Austin was considering Givens for such a long time. then changed his mind and went for coving, and that gives Dave an opportunity to capitalize his really good tiles there with Iron Ice for a lot more than he would have had Austin taken Givens.
Yeah, really interesting. I was pretty sure that Austin would play Givens there, but he took a more aggressive approach, holding the S himself and saying, I'm going to play Coving and leave myself an S for an even better play in that spot. But Dave beat him to the punch, and you can see now Dave is narrowly ahead by 3 points. And Austin, oddly, despite the fact that he has some pretty good scoring tiles here between the W and the P, not very good bingo tiles. He doesn't really have a great place to score with them, and he's not going to be able to retake the lead.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I mean, by that much. I mean, he'll retake the lead, but nowhere near enough to scare Dave here.
Yeah. So do you think that? I mean, my guess is what was going through Austin's head was, the two biggest scoring spots or the two biggest comeback spots for Dave are through that O and to the S. Dave just played 4 letters, so the odds of him drawing a bingo play that uses all 7 tiles, not so great. So maybe he's thinking, I'll play Coving now, keep a really good lead, and kind of go for the shutdown next turn. Maybe he draws a bingo to the ASS play, or just another big scoring play. I think maybe that's what he was going for, was kind of the looking multiple moves ahead of how could the board best work to his advantage. I'm guessing that's why he ended up changing his mind here. And it happened to not work out. It was a case where Dave did happen to have something really good in return.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if you're Austin and you're looking at Dave spending a ton of time on his move and then play Butte, I would be a little scared that the letters he's leaving over are decent. I don't know. But then again, Dave did not have an S there. He picked one after his play, so that could be hindsight talking. Either way, Austin it feels like this is now a perfectly even game.
Yeah.
Austin's not going to be up by that much, and Dave will definitely have some good stuff on his next turn available to play with these nice scoring tiles that he has. So this is anybody's game all of a sudden. Austin had a nice lead. That's evaporated now.
Yeah. And so, Arden, basically noting your comment about not wanting to give the opponent the spot, I think, sort of the more time you spend in the game, it's less about trying to prevent something like that. We're looking at kind of average scores, but, for you, if you feel like getting 30 points is going to be really good, it's okay to go ahead and go for it. But again, as we chatted about before, it's really about trying to balance a bunch of different factors. How much are you going to score now? How much are you going to score later? And in the case of, something like Bake or Bank, basically, you may be sacrificing quite a bit for next turn to get something now.
Yeah, it's definitely a great discussion going on there, which is a classic thing that new players need to internalize about Scrabble, is that it really is best to think about your play as a combination of the word you're playing and a couple other things, the primary one being the letters you leave over after your play, right? So 2 plays that score the same amount of points, one of which leaves all consonants, the other which leaves a nice mixture of consonants and vowels. The one that has that nice mixture of tiles left over will have the edge. And we've actually been able to sort of numerically quantify that and try our best to assign values to letters that are left over. And that's one of the main ways that we currently evaluate the strength of our plays, the score that you get and the value of the letters that you leave over. The value of the letters that you leave over is reflected in how likely you are to score well on subsequent turns. So that balance is part of basically every play. And then that's when you start adding in that, well, maybe not then, maybe first and foremost is you also have to think beyond score and letters left over. What is the objective that I'm hoping to achieve with my play?
Wait, that one is still in the dictionary,
I think
right?
this one is still in there as a verb, meaning to like slap something. I thought this one.
I don't. Well,
Is it?
Dave would know. Yeah, it still is.
I think this one is still
Yeah.
in. Yeah. But we'll see if Dave bats an eye at this. So not to get mired into that too much, but definitely some words that have been staples in Scrabble have left the dictionary in recent months. So I think this one is still there. And Austin's going to set up a spot to play Budgies, the parakeet.
Yeah. That would be pretty evil to Dave, right? If Austin was able to get Budgies down.
Very evil. Yeah, I saw that. I think Jello Mocha's called that out there as well. Very, very evil. So Austin goes up to 317 after that play. Dave is sitting on pretty good scoring tiles. I don't think he has a really good option to block it other than maybe something like Fank off of it near Chi. I mean, maybe that's the only way that he can block that. So
yeah, I mean, there's a universe, I suppose, where that happens, but
I think he's likelier to play Fanked through the E of Overtoil.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of. First, I was like, oh, he could play Fanked, and Doma. Doma is not a word.
Oh, right. Yes.
Like, oh, that's so convenient. No.
So, yeah, I think Austin, you can see he has the word Budgies lined up, ready to go with EW and Soma parallel to his previous play. And Dave cannot have any inkling that Austin has that. All Dave has to do here is he's trying to maximize his own scoring and bingoing chances, as he should. Worth noting, there is a blank still to come. It's possible that Dave could pick that and be able to keep the game close even after Austin bingos. So it's not that Dave is out of it. And he might have the spider senses going to block Austin's play somehow. Yeah. So Antler Killer asks, why would you guys have the effort to learn the meaning of the words? Many of us do not put in that effort.
I do not. I have no idea.
So it's definitely, Budgies and Swap is available too. Yeah. So it's going to be basically impossible. Yeah, that's going to be tough for Dave to actually prevent Austin from bingoing here. Good point. So we will see. Yeah, Budgie means Budrigar. My mom has 2 Budrigar parakeets, and I 2 others before those, and I am big fans of the Budrigar parakeet. Very, very partial to them. So this is kind of weird, Conrad. Look at Dave's clock. I feel like this is a lot of game left, and he's had some difficult decisions for sure, but Dave is normally a pretty fast, decisive player. I think this is more of a testament to that some of his decisions here have been a little bit tricky, but then again, he's had a lot of bingos too. So this is unique for Dave to have his clock be this low at this phase of the game.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, this is the play to use a bunch of time, so he did save enough time such that he could burn 4 or 5 minutes here. And yeah, there are a lot of candidate plays you could really consider choosing from here. So obviously, we have 2020 foresight, but yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also worth noting if he plays Fanked, the game is immediately over. I now see Deldar. I now see what you're saying, because it would open Budgies as a double for
this is an interesting one. So he plays Peak. I think his reasoning for this, he must, one of the big reasons that he's done this, I'm sure, is he's looked into the unseen tiles and seen that there are no more A's to come, so he can't duplicate his A, and there were a bunch more E's to draw. So maybe using the E there was less of an issue as it normally would be. You always want to keep that E if you can. But Austin quickly bingos. Yeah, I'll get you guys the unseen pool from Dave's perspective in just a second.
Yeah, I mean, fading if there's 5 left would be pretty good for Dave. Give him a shot at least. But it looks like Austin has seems to have been the kind of the theme the last day and a half. Just found the good tiles and immediately drew them.
Yeah, wow, quite the draw for Austin there. We've got the tracking from Dave's perspective. Oh, well, Dave quickly plays fading, so let me just update that one more time now from Austin's perspective. Stand by. So yeah, Austin does look like he's in pretty good shape. Here's what he's looking at from tracking. There's 10 tiles unseen to Austin. That means there's 3 tiles left in the bag, 7 of them on Dave's rack. Oh, wow. And you can see endowing would be playable through the eye of fading. So let me get the scores now. After fading, Dave is actually pretty close. So if Austin somehow doesn't block that eye, which there are many situations where he'll be tempted by playing elsewhere, Dave has a
I don't think he
bingo.
has to. He doesn't even have to. He doesn't even have to. Right? He's got jaunt for 50 something, and he saves EX for a minimum 30 plus. Like he can pretty much, I think, short of if there's some ridiculous.
But again, there's only 3 tiles in the bag.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said there were 10 in the bag. Sorry,
10 tiles unseen.
10 unseen. Oh, then obviously I'm happy to eat my words after that.
Yeah, so this is actually, given that situation, so the 10 tiles that are unseen to Austin are DEEGNNOWOUWZ. So Austin has to worry a little bit about the Z, but probably if I'm in Austin's shoes right here, I'm not that worried about the Z because I have the X and the J. I should be able to counteract heavy scoring plays with those power tiles. What Austin should be concerned about is, can I outrun a bingo? And really that might sway him to play on the left side of the board and block the tiles of fading, which really are truly the only threat for Dave to bingo right now. So curious to see what Austin does here.
Yeah, and I think Austin does, have to consider, I mean, that does seem like the straightest forward play.
Yeah, Hex looks like a great choice for him here.
Yeah, because he also has to be careful, right? You have 2 power tiles, like the J and the Z on your rack at the end, and then, you don't want to get into a situation where Dave can, get 20 or 30 points off of your rack. But in this case, he has that ideal blocking play that also manages to use the X. So, not too much to think about here.
Yeah, bag is now empty. Austin has confidently, with 12 minutes and 39 seconds on his clock, correctly ascertained that the play that's called for him here is simply to play something blocking fading off, and he does so using up one of his 2 power tiles. Again, power tiles being those really high scoring letters, of which there are only 1 in the set. So we typically consider J, Q, X, Z to be those. This looks like a solid win for Austin here. So I don't think Dave has any opportunity to do anything creative because Austin does have the J and the Z. Sometimes those would be, difficult to use together, but because he has the blank on his rack as well, he should be able to deploy, if not both of those, at least one of the 2 for a lot of points somewhere on this board, I think. So we shall see what Dave does, but this is definitely Austin's game to win here.
Yeah. Now, do you know for round 18 pairings, are they pairing based on each round? No, it looks like they're already up.
I thought there was some idea that they were going to pause in some of the divisions, but maybe not. Maybe not this one. So
Dave and Austin would not be playing next round, which potentially means that Austin could outright win the tournament, probably without, I guess, depending upon what happens in Josh's game, without actually having to play someone who can still win.
True. So Dave's, I guess it's worth it from Dave's perspective to just consider, do I have some way of going out quickly and collecting some points from the Z or J, but unfortunately the score of the game is too far out of reach. There really is no option that Dave has here. So no matter how much he thinks, it's the reality is that this will be Austin's game. Nicely played to both players, really.
I'm really just waiting for Dave to just spell out no on his rack. That's really what I'm
as a message, yeah.
For.
Yeah, akin to Nigel Richards once playing SOS in a game for 3 points against I think Pacorn, who was bagging him very badly in that game.
Yeah, that was classic.
Yeah, sending out an SOS. So,
Anyone who doesn't think Nigel's human, if you're out there, Nigel.
Yeah, that would be a treat to have Nigel giving Pogs and Keck W's in the chat. Yeah, I guess if I'm Dave, I'm probably playing Wound here or something like that. I'm not sure. From Austin's POV, there's a pretty cool play if he wants to score with his Z and play through the X on the board using his blank. Does anybody see a cool Collins only 7-letter word through that XI?
When I first started playing in the more inclusive international lexicon of CSW, I once had an opening rack of EEIU TXZ. And I did not know the word. I played E6 for 38.
Which I mean, normally that you'd be happy with that, but yeah,
that one I did go over, and
Interesting play by Dave here of nudge for 14.
I think he believes that maybe Own isn't going to get blocked, or there's another good spot for OWN next turn. Probably. Where's the other spot? I'm sure it exists. Dave rarely makes.
I mean, another good spot. I mean, there's definitely a spot with Coving and Go, but that's not very good.
Yeah, I would assume there's another. There must be something we're not seeing, right? Dave always makes good endgame plays.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons that Dave always makes good endgame plays is he always has lots of time on his clock going into the endgame, which this is one of the few games I've seen for Dave not having that. So I don't know. I'm not sure. So let's see. So if Austin blocks that play of Own, yeah, that does look like his only out play. So yeah, lots of people pointing out the crazy play of Zoosite. I'm not even sure how you would say that. Yeah, it's being pointed out. Let's see. It's probably a rock or a mineral or something like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Chat doesn't seem to realize that doesn't Zoosite block both
it does, yeah.
One and Own.
Well, it does. Well, I mean, it doesn't block Own off of Coving, so there will still be. You mean the good one?
The good ones, yeah.
Yes, it blocks the good ones for sure.
Yeah.
So it's not obvious that Austin will see that though. So it looks like, in fact, he plays Nays, getting rid of the Z. That's normally that would be pretty solid. But certainly what's called for here is something that blocks Dave's big outplay. But again, it's all water under the bridge. This is definitely Austin's win, no matter what. Dave does manage to cut that spread pretty effectively, though. So the final score looks like it's going to be 464 to Austin Shin against Dave Wiegand's 437. So that's a big win for Austin. He was already a game up against his closest competition, Dave Wiegand. Now he's going to be 2 games up with 3 games to go. So